Hey, and welcome to a new YouTube series where I'll be showing you how to build simple but cool animations in Webflow using the new Webflow Interactions V3 setup. So if you don't know what that is, it is Webflow's new interaction menu, specifically for building GSAP animations, but it also offers timeline view, and in a lot of ways makes building animations simpler in Webflow. So through this series, I'm hoping you can learn how to build a couple of cool animations and also have a better understanding of how the new interactions menu works. So let's get started. So for today, we're going to be building out this animation here. Oh, it'll be on display somewhere here. And hopefully this will be really quick and easy. But to start things off, I already have my elements set up in Webflow. So from the animation that you saw, we have an image, we have a couple of blogs that are being resized to reveal the image in the background. We have an overlay, we have a heading. So not that much going on, but still a couple of different things that we do need to animate to finalize our animation. So first thing is I'm going to select whatever I want my trigger to be. So in this case, we're doing page load. So it really doesn't matter. I'll just select my body tag, which I've given the class of wrapper, and I'm already on the interactions tab where I can see I have a couple of different trigger options. If you've not used the new interactions menu and you don't know where it is, you'll be on classic interactions by default. And if you just select this drop down, you'll be able to select interactions with GSAP. So as I said, we're going to be doing page load. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that, and I'll leave the name as page load interaction. The trigger is obviously page load, and you can customize it a bit more. But in this video, we're not really going to be playing around with those settings. So we just want to go straight into adding an action. So I'm going to select what I want to animate, which will be my block element to begin with. And I'm going to select add an action. So there are a couple of different presets you can use, which are honestly really great. Similar to how it was in the previous version, there were a lot of presets that you could choose from. In this case, we want to do something custom. So I'm going to select that, and I'm just going to leave the name as custom for now. We can always go back and change it. But you'll see that now that I've selected an action, we have this timeline that's appeared at the bottom here, which will preview our animation. Very nifty if you're used to using After Effects, Jitter, or really any online animation tool. You're very familiar with timeline view, and we are so thankful it has come to Webflow because it's honestly great. So what I want to animate is the height. So I'm going to go in and select animated properties, this plus icon, and I'm going to select height. So it's going to add that property to my list of properties I can animate. You could always remove any of these, add more if you kind of want to organize your menu a bit more. And in this case, I'm going to want to animate my height to go from 100%, which is what it's at now, to 0%. So if I preview this one change I've made, you can already see that my height of the block elements goes from 100% to 0%. Now we didn't set a from value, which is the initial value of your element. We could write 100%, but because in the Webflow designer, I've already set the height of the elements to 100% by default, I don't really need to go in here and do that again. So we're going to leave that for now. Now, the second thing I want to do is actually want to stagger my animation. Now, in the previous Webflow setup, how I did it is that I would add combo classes to each element so I could set delays and that way achieve a stagger effect. I don't know if there was a simpler way to do it. That's just how I did it. But with the new setup, you actually have a stagger option, so you don't need to be doing all that. You can select this and choose between total time and offset time. So total time just basically means it'll stagger it automatically according to the total amount of time you indicate, and then offset time allows you to set a specific delay for each interaction. So that's the one I want to use, and I'm going to give an offset of 0.3 seconds. So after every 0.3 seconds, the next element is going to animate. And what element is it targeting specifically? Remember, it's targeting the class that we selected, which is the block class. And you can see I have 4 divs here that have that same class. So all the elements that have that class are being targeted in this case. Now, if I preview my animation again, you can see the height is being animated, but it is now being staggered, which is exactly what we want. So before we do our next interaction, I want to just change the duration to 2 seconds, so it's a bit slower. And I'm going to select power 3 in out for easing. You can play around with all these different easing effects. This is just the one that I'm really liking to use right now. And if I preview it again, I like that the animation is a bit slower and a bit more, subtle. So another cool thing about the timeline is you can actually resize it, because as you build more complex animations, you'll be having a lot of elements in here. So it's easier if you have more of a window to see all your different interactions. You can also zoom in and out. I'm using a MacBook, so on my trackpad, I'm just using 2 fingers and squeezing them and spraying them out in order to zoom in and out. So that way you can either show more timeline or show less timeline depending on what it is that you want. So that's a really cool effect. And the last thing I want to highlight on the timeline menu is you can also show outline, which basically allows you to see the outlines of your animations, especially if you have like hidden animations. So for example, in this case, our div blocks can't really be seen in the beginning because they're the same background color as our wrapper. But if I am showing the outlines, then I can still see them. So I like to make sure to check this because I feel like it just makes it easier to visualize all my elements. So now that that's done, we can actually add another animation to this. So in this case, we also want to update the spacers, which are these gaps, if I just let my animation play, in between the blocks. So now let's go ahead and do our second animation. So just keep in mind, if you do select this plus icon, basically what that means is it's adding a new target. So you can target multiple elements at the same time and have the same animation happen to them. In this case, even though we are playing around with the height of the spacer, we want it to happen after this first animation. So it's just easier to go back and just add another action as opposed to having it appear at the same time as the previous interaction. So once again, we're going to select custom. Now you can see it's added my second animation there. And you can see that it's targeting the spacer class, but it's also specifically targeting the align bottom combo class. And that's because I've added combo classes to my spacer elements because I want some of them to animate upwards and the others to animate downwards. So I had to specify the alignment for them. So there's the combo class align bottom and then also combo class align top. So if I go back to my interaction, if I can find it, there we go. So if I go back to my interaction and click custom 2, which I actually will name now, spacer resize, I'm going to select and remove align bottom because I just want it to affect all the spacer elements. The direction it'll animate in is already set by what I did in the style panel, so selecting the alignment. So I don't need to actually specify that here. So with that selected, I am going to set the duration of this to, let's say 1.2 seconds, and I'm going to choose the same easing as I did before. And for animated properties, I'm once again going to select height and choose 0%. Now, if I preview that, so we have our first interaction and then our second interaction, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, next thing I want to animate is the size of my window. So I want the image to enlarge from where it is and expand to fill the full viewport width and height of the screen. So with this window selected, because that is in fact what is containing everything, I'm just going to select that. And once again, I'm going to go back. Before I do that, let me just rename my first interaction really quickly. So we'll call this block resize because we were resizing the blocks. And then with window selected, I'm going to add in a new animation. Once again, make it custom and we'll call this window resize. We're doing a lot of resizing interactions. And for the duration, I do want to slow it down a bit. I'm going to put 3 seconds for now and we might play around with that. Same easing as normal. And I want the width and the height to be animated. So I want the width to go from where it is now, which is 50%, I believe, to 100%. And I want the height to also be animated from what it is now, which I actually think is maybe auto, but I want it to transform into 100 VH. So it covers the full viewport height of, the person's window. So now if I preview this last part of the animation, we can see that our image does in fact zoom in. So the width increases to 100% and that height increases to VH. And I think I actually like the timing of that as well. Great. So now we only have a few more interactions to add in and we're almost done. So first thing is I want to have this Well, I'll start with the overlay. I do want the overlay to fade in, so I don't want it to appear from the beginning. You can see there's this slight dark overlay on my image. I want it to appear towards the end because that's when our heading will be coming in. So I'm just going to select where I want it to start on my timeline. And another tip is I hold the shift key to select. Actually, if you hold the shift key and then also select any of your elements in your interaction panel, it'll move it incrementally. So it allows you to move it in increments as opposed to free moving. So that's another useful tool if you want to be really precise with how you're positioning your elements. So I'm just going to select that and then select my overlay element. I'm going to go back and add in another action. This case, because I just want the overlay to fade in, I don't need to do something custom. I'll just select the fade in preset. It allows me to set the duration. I wanted to kind of take the same amount of time as my window resize to appear. And then I'll use the same, well, maybe I won't. Yeah, okay, I'll keep it as power 3 in. That's kind of the one it went to. Okay, so now with those attributes selected, I'm going to animate the opacity. So I want it to go from 0 to 100. So I'm going to select this from button because I do need to manually set it to 0. By default, it is showing 100%, but I want the initial value to be 0. So now if I preview my animation and I see in the beginning, doesn't seem like there's an overlay because it's at 0. And then towards the end, we can see that it appears at 100. Now 100 actually isn't what you want. That's too dark. I think in the designer, I had it at like 50. So I'm going to put 50 instead because that's the effect that we wanted. Now if I preview that, we can see how it looks. The only thing is I think the animation comes in a bit too late. So I feel like the easing isn't really what I want. We could try setting no easing because I mean, it's a fade in anyway. So does it really matter? And I think the lack of an easing is actually better for me. So I'm going to leave that as fade in and I'll label it as overlay fade in. And then I'm going to select my text element and we want this to animate as a slide in. So going back once again, we're going to add a new action. And this time we're going to say we want it to slide it up. We're going to move this so it happens here. Now we want it to happen, I think I did kind of like halfway as the window is resizing. So we'll select that. And we'll just preview what it looks like for now and see if we need to change anything. Okay. Well, I'll probably just kind of move it so it's like in the middle. That way it's already in frame by the time, the window is done resizing. And then for the easing, once again, I'm going to select a different easing because I think this one delays the animation a bit too much for me. And we're going to preview that. Okay. And that works. We might actually be able to move that back in that case. And maybe a bit forward. Great. Okay. I think that works really well. Obviously, if you wanted to do more with this, you could, but I feel like that's pretty effective for what we want. And I think those are all the animations that I wanted to include. So now let's go ahead and preview our animation, on the larger screen. So we're going to click the preview button and see how it looks like. So our blocks animate and then our image animates and fills our viewport width and height and our text comes in, which is exactly what we want. So while editing, I realized I forgot one final interaction that I think ties the whole animation together. So I'm gonna add in one final clip where I add in that animation and that'll be the end. Or adding in that final interaction that I forgot to include. And this is just to scale the image to have this really subtle zoom in effect. And that's gonna be an interaction that takes place while the entire, so basically from beginning to end. So we're going to select our heading. So these are all the interactions we've added so far, and we're going to select our image cover, which is what contains our background image, add a new action, and we can do scale in because it is actually a scale in animation that we're doing. And then for duration, so if I just increase that, I'm going to start it from when our blocks are resizing, and then the end, I'm gonna have it end like just a bit after the other animations end as well. So that's like 6.6 seconds. For easy, I'm gonna leave it as none. I just want it to be linear. And the scale, I want it to go from 1 to, let's say like 1.1. Yeah, I think 1.1 is probably good. So now if we preview, we can see that our image has a subtle zoom in effect while everything else is going on. So if we preview that once more, we have our subtle zoom in effect. So you can actually extend when this ends a bit more if you don't want it to just end abruptly. So we can even go up to 9 seconds. And then obviously what you do after this really just depends on you, but it creates a really nice subtle, almost like a parallax type of effect, which is great. And that's it. Now our animation is in fact finally complete. Hopefully this video has been super informative for you and kind of given you a bit more guidance on how you can build these nice interactions using the new interaction menu. Check the description if you want a link to this clonable to see how all the elements work, or you can try building it out for yourself in your Webflow dashboard. But yeah, stay tuned. I'll try and do these every 2 weeks, every week maybe, depending on like if I get inspo for a new animation, or if you have any animation requests, keyword simple animation requests, you can let me know in the comments as well. But until next time, thank you for watching. Bye.